All right, Phil Lee returning with another episode of Civil War Chat, and today is January 12th, 2021. Today's topic will be Robert E. Lee and his relationship to his students while he was president of Washington College, which he was from 1865 to 1870. But before that, let's get started by letting you know that if you click on the notification bell in the upper right of your screen, you'll be notified when I have future episodes of Civil War Chat. So please click that bell. Where I think we're at about 500 subscribers now. Let's get past 500 and take it on from there. All right, so let me pull up my notes on this. Bear with me just a second while I get them up. All right. Robert E. Lee and his students while he was president of Washington College. 4 months after his April 1865 surrender at Appomattox, Robert E. Lee became president of Washington College in remote Lexington, Virginia. When he arrived, the school had but 40 students and 4 faculty. It had also been ransacked during the war between the states by federal armies. When he died 5 years later, it had over 300 students and had become a respected academic institution. Shortly thereafter, it was renamed Washington and Lee College. Lee's relationship with his students underscored a tradition that has presently put W&L among the top educational institutions nationally. He counseled, quote, "You should not force young men to do their duty, but let them do it voluntarily and thereby develop their characters," close quote. Thus, when one arriving freshman asked that Lee provide a list of Washington College rules, he replied, quote, "We have but one rule, and it is that all students must be gentlemen," close quote. Let's consider a couple of examples. When one Georgia student cut classes during Christmas time to go skating along the frozen North River, Lee summoned the youth to his office. Since the South was impoverished, Lee recognized that most every student was present due to the sacrifices of his family, and he was determined to help the students appreciate that such sacrifices had been made in order to enable them to attend Washington College. Lee explained to the student, quote, "If you had asked for permission to go skating, your work is very good, and I would have granted it. As you know, our Southern people are very poor, and to send you to college, your parents must be forced to economize and deprive themselves of many things." The boy choked up. "Stop, General Lee," he said. "You will never see me in your office again," close quote. In another case, Lee summoned a freshman from North Carolina who disdained books and class attendance during his first month at school. When the reports came in, Lee sent for the boy and went over his grades, asking if there had been a mistake. The student admitted to the low grades, and he offered no excuse for his absences. Since Lee was acquainted with the boy's parents, he knew they would be humiliated by such a report. Quote, "I do not know what to do," he said, and sat there for a moment. Then, without another word, he quietly tore up the paper. The boy wept and promised to do his best thereafter. He redeemed that pledge in every way. Lee also understood that some boys, like some people, were too defiant or immature to understand the language of a gentleman. When a professor said that a mild rebuke may not be recognized by the targeted person, Lee replied, "Now, I cannot help it. If a gentleman cannot understand the language of a gentleman, he must remain in ignorance." In one such instance, a student entered Lee's office chewing tobacco after having been beckoned for a disciplinary meeting with the Lee. Let's call him Mr. Jones. "Mr. Jones," said Lee, Chewing is particularly obnoxious to me. Go out and remove that quid and never appear before me again chewing tobacco. Shortly afterward, the boy returned, chewing as vigorously as ever. Lee looked at him and then scribbled something on a page of paper and said, "Mr. Jones, here is a note for you. It will be posted on the college bulletin in 10 minutes," close quote. The student took the note, unfolded the paper, and read to himself, quote, "Mr. Jones is dismissed from Washington College for disrespect to the president," close quote. Such instruction apparently is not common on today's college campuses. Unfortunately, common sense is not so common there. There are none so blind as those who will not see. As I mentioned yesterday, today's cultural environment is dangerous for those who are not part of the majority. We may well be entering an almost Soviet style type of totalitarianism where if you are dependent upon a job or your livelihood is dependent upon avoiding being dismissed for having unpopular political opinion, then you should remain silent. Just because this is the United States does not mean it could not evolve into something like the totalitarianism of communist China, in which there's a symbiotic relationship between the government and the giant corporations, which control the people and strangle in the cradle infant companies trying to compete with the established giant corporations. So if you are vulnerable to being, what's the term? I can't recall the term right now, but, you know, fired or canceled, that's the term, canceled because you have unpopular political opinion, no matter how rational, no matter how legitimate your opinion. If you're in danger of being fired or losing your livelihood because of that, then don't do it right now. Don't speak out right now. Hope that things calm down. But right now, things are looking very dicey. The cancellation of a Twitter competitor, Parler, taken off of Apple's App Store, similarly at Google, ban, well, not their servers, their computer servers are hosted by Amazon servers. I think Amazon has almost 50% of the market. And Amazon is basically told Power, they told Power, we're not going to host you anymore. And so if you go to Power, PARLER.com, you can't, there's nothing there. It's off the internet, totally. I'm not a member of Parler, or never have been a member of Parler, but I don't presume that all the people that are on there or that have been on there are revolutionaries set on violence any more than people on Facebook during 2020 were revolutionaries set on violence. If you want, if big tech in Silicon Valley really wanted to promote peace and security, then Facebook should have been shut down, because there are countless, thousands, probably tens of millions of messages on Facebook were used to promote violence in our cities by Black Lives Matter and Antifa people during 2020 and before. So anyway, here's the point. If you have to remain silent, you've got to figure out some way to have your voice heard. And to do that, support people. Now, this is going to be sound self-serving and in partly is, but support people like me that can be your voice. And the way to support me is to buy my books. I'm not asking you for money without anything in return. buy my books. I can promise you what you'll find from my books, you won't find from Eric Foner, James McPherson, and David Blight, and all of their acolytes regarding the Civil War and Reconstruction. There, you get the same message, distorted, even, I think, sometimes deliberately distorted, and hostile in every way to the Southern perspective. In fact, those three men and all of their acolytes, they don't recognize another perspective, your perspective. They recognize only their perspective, which they have incorrectly assumed is factual. They take their opinion and present it as fact. You've got to challenge them. Now, all of my books are going to do that for you. Let me recommend, let me get my notes down here. This one, Ulysses Grant's Failed Presidency. Anyone, this was probably the most corrupt presidential administration in the history of the United States. But the biographies about Grant now treat him as though he is some kind of a savior. They put a halo around his head. But his two administrations were full of corruption, and his Reconstruction policies impoverished the South and abused the black voter. So let me recommend U.S. Grant's Failed Presidency by Phil Lee, and you can get it for $20 at Amazon. I will send you a autographed copy for $25. Just email me, Phil, PHIL _ Lee, LEIGH, at me.com. Another one, Causes of the Civil War. Again, that one's $22 at Amazon, Barnes & Noble. You want it from me, $25 with an autograph. I will cover postage for both of these books in the United States. And they're both $25, postage delivered, paid, and autographed by me, Phil Lee. The third thing you can do is go to my Amazon author page, just Phil, PHIL. Maybe it's actually PHILIP, 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 Lee, LEIGH. And take a look at all of my books. I can promise you that if all you've been reading is the material from Eric Foner, David Blight, and James McPherson and their acolytes, you're going to find an entirely different source of information and perspective from my books. So, okay, I want to thank you for watching. It's been fun talking to you, and click the bell. I look forward to seeing you next time. Okay, thanks for watching.